All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here. Today, we're going to take a look at a bunch of really cool, unique deck lists that did well recently in Pokemon Pocket Online tournaments. We do this video literally once a week at this point, and we don't really have a name for this series. Is it like Wacky Wednesday? Is it, off meta showcase? Is it the midweek meta roundup? I don't know. I don't have a series name here for these videos, but I have a lot of fun doing them. As always, we run tournaments basically every weekend, the Pocket Mads Pocket Tournament series, but, a lot of other people run tournaments throughout the week, and, a lot of really fun decks and interesting decks do well at those tournaments, and that's what this video is all about. So we're going to highlight them today. Every deck in this tournament was played by somebody, in the community, and, they had good records, and they either won tournaments or did very well at these tournaments, so that's what we're going to do today. You can navigate the video using the timestamps down below. I should have the energy types, so you can go ahead and do that. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's just dive right into it. I don't got nothing else to mention. No tournament that I'm going to tell you to register for, because this weekend's actually the Invitational Tournament. So it's going to be a closed event. The top 128 players of the past season will be competing for the title of Grand Champion. It's going to be fun. Tune into the live streams this weekend, but no tournament or open tournament to register for this weekend, basically. The first deck we're going to take a look at here is Rizzleby from Indonesia. He was playing Mega Steelix and Skarmory from the tournament here, Rapid number 21. And really interesting. He went 6-1, had a great run, actually. In Swiss rounds, went undefeated. Beat a pretty wide variety of decks here, but did end up losing in top 8 to a Suicune and Greninja player. But 6-1 is a very respectable record. Let's take a look at the deck list. And, this is going to be kind of the only core package for Mega Steelix that anybody has been able to really play, which is going to be with Onix and with Brock, right? At the end of the day, we got to get 4 energies onto Mega Steelix somehow. I do think the developers intended us to utilize Onix and Brock, which is sort of this package that's been in the game for ever. So Mega Steelix, I guess, is sort of piggybacking on that package. Brock, of course, allows us to accelerate and generate fighting type energies to attach them to our Onix card. And because Mega Steelix has 2 colorless energies in the attack cost, we can just play Steel energies in the deck list and then use Brock to accelerate some additional energies before we evolve into Mega Steelix. Now, Mega Steelix itself is really not that bad of a card. It's just kind of slow, and that's really what it comes down to. It's slow, a little bit inconsistent, but other than that, the attack is actually quite good. 220 HP is quite good. It's just about getting those energies onto Onix, Onix and then Steelix. It's a little bit unreliable, but we're actually just pairing Mega Steelix here with Skarmory. And I actually really do like Skarmory. This is the Metal Arms Pokemon here from a while back. I forget what set Skarmory came out in. Maybe it's Space Time Smackdown. This card is very old, but keep in mind, Skarmory for 1 Metal Energy has 80 HP and has the ability to deal 50 damage for 1 energy. And, these types of cards were a lot more relevant, I would say, back in the day. Now, you still see them to some degree, but they're kind of played in favor of things that maybe just deal bench damage, and you can combo with them with Cyrus, right? Things like Jirachi, things like, Mega Absol or Heatmore, or things like that, right? So the 50 damage threshold was actually pretty relevant back in the day. I think there's going to be more of a rise in that. I think that with the Lycia package coming out, last expansion, more and more Pokemon are coming out that have 50 HP or less. Baby Pokemon are relevant. Pokemon like Skarmory, and there was the Arceus Link Carnivine from back in the day as well. These are cards that I actually kind of like. So, Skarmory here is going to be able to hold its own for a couple of turns, probably. You hope so, at least in the active spot. It's pretty aggressive, especially if you lead off with it and then you just go into Mega Steelix in the late game, and hopefully that's enough to win. The one thing, though, about Mega Steelix and this deck in general is that I really don't like it that much going first, and I really don't like it if you lead with Onix, right? Most of the time with this particular deck, if you are stuck with Onix in the active spot, you're probably just going to have to let it go down, which, doesn't feel that great. However, taking a look at Mega Steelix in general, it is a card that has enough going for it. With the combination of Pokemon Center Lady with Steel Aprons, Heavy Helmets with the damage reduction with the healing, you can kind of make your way even pretty far into the late game to get enough wins or KOs to win the game. Even if, you're kind of a late game Pokemon, if it takes a while to get Mega Steelix on the board. So, a very simple deck list here. Nothing's really too crazy that stands out to me. 1 Cyrus, 1 Mars, 1 Guzma. These are, kind of more niche support cards in a deck list like this. They aren't necessarily mission critical, but they're good cards. Double Research, double Pokeball. A very simple deck, and at the end of the day, we might be getting Mega Mawile, which I do think will be a Steel type Pokemon if we do get it in B2. The Steel type in general just feels this is a tangent, but the steel type just feels a bit all over the place. You know, there's like definitely like a type of way that they want us to play these steel type Pokemon. They've given us Steel Apron. You know, a lot of these steel type Pokemon have like damage reduction. We have a couple of supporter cards that also sort of facilitate that. We had Skarmory EX a couple of sets ago. So I like the steel type. It's just that these damage reduction strategies like typically aren't really enough, or at least the Pokemon that the strategies are used with are just not strong enough to really be considered like super meta viable. So steel type is in a really interesting place. Maybe that changes with Mega Mawile moving forward. We'll have to see. But yeah, I really like this Mega Steelix deck. And like I said, I mean, he went 6-1. So a very, very respectable record here. And I think Mega Steelix is probably one of those more underrated Pokemon, kind of like one support type Pokemon or package away from this card, honestly, probably being very relevant. But anyway, moving forward here, shout out to Rizzleby from Indonesia, 6-1. Next up is going to be Zenith, and this is going to be Dark Greninja. This is a deck that people are familiar with. However, this deck did get first place, so I wanted to highlight it at the Uwu tournament number 7. Actually, a fairly large tournament here. I think several hundred players competing at this tournament, and 10-1-1 was the record. So, you know, again, I don't think that Dark Greninja's really been a deck that most people would, you know, consider like a top meta deck. It is a Greninja deck, so, you know, it is meta to some degree, right? But I wanted to showcase it because, you know, very, very strong record here. He only lost 1 game this entire tournament, undefeated in Top Cut, of course, and he won this tournament. So, you know, just what I like to highlight decks that aren't necessarily considered to be like at the top of the meta, but are still winning tournaments here. And this is pretty standard, you know, and this deck list, I think, has been standard ever since last season. Still a pretty respectable deck to play in ranked and in tournaments. We had one, I believe, in top 8 at our tournament this past weekend. It's a good deck list. So, you know, I don't have really too much to say about this. It's not going to shock the world here. It's not anything, you know, you guys probably haven't seen before, but it is sort of a proof of concept, right? And that's what we also try to do in this video, is highlight decks that, or highlight tournaments, right? And the decks that win those tournaments, because, you know, I mean, if somebody wins a 200-300 player tournament, like that is like a pretty big deal, and I do feel obligated to at least mention it here on the channel, because that's what we do, is we, you know, discuss the metagame and we talk about it. So I like this deck, you know, try it out. I call this deck personally, I call it High Roll Control, or I call it Dark Greninja, but High Roll Control is a funny name for this because it is a very inconsistent deck list, but it is an entirely you know, control-based strategy with item lock Chingling, with supporter discarding with Mega Absol, with the chip damage from Darkrai, and with the Ping, Cyrus, Water Shuriken, Greninja combination. It's a completely just a control deck list, but does feel like it has a really significant high roll potential with, you know, Greninja and Mega Absol and Chinglings and whatnot. So it's very fun. Very fun deck, but kind of relies on having all of the Pokemon it needs to. A very strong deck sometimes, but not the most consistent. Most people are just sort of playing the Altaria version of this and not so much, you know, the Darkrai Absol version. I think Altaria is sort of the best Mega Pokemon, so that makes sense. But we all know that that's a significant meta deck. So there you go, Dark Greninja winning a tournament. Definitely pretty cool. Shout out to Zenith from the United States. Nothing else to really say about that. Next up, though, at the Hype Packs tournament is Seedax. And guess what? This is Crobat. And we talked about Crobat on Friday's video last week. If you guys did mention, or if you guys haven't seen that, I really think Crobat is a significant player. In fact, when I was looking throughout all of the tournaments this week when making this video, I noticed that Crobat won actually 2 or 3 tournaments this week. It might have been, from like a sheer numbers perspective, the most winning deck this week. And I find that to be very interesting. I think Crobat's very slept on. That's why I mentioned it previously in the week. 9-1-1 Seedax here. Let's take a look at the deck list, guys, because this is Crobat. This is going to be Crobat EX with Nihilegos, but they are also including, you know, the Absol package, Leap Over Absol and Mega Absol. So, you know, that is sort of the fairly common way to play Absol in really any dark type deck. I think the potential in most scenarios of playing one Mega Absol is enough of an upside to just include it into your deck list, right? That's why we see it in Hydreigon. That's why we see it in Dark Greninja. You know, it's just a decent card, and sometimes it will win you the game. Sometimes it loses you the game, but I think more often than not, it's going to help you. So that's the concept here. But the core package of the deck is going to be Zubat Nihilego, which, to be honest with you, is just a really decent archetype. And I think Crobat massively slept on right now this season. You know, if we do end up getting that Mega Gardevoir card, it's probably going to be weak to dark here. We'll see. By the way, I think the next set should be announced either tomorrow or Friday. So very exciting. But yeah, Mega Crobat's a very relevant card. And I think that just like the breakpoints of the seasons, like this season and last season, really ever since Mega Rising came out and Mega Pokemon were released, like the specific breakpoints matter, and they're just different. You know what I mean? Like back before you would play Crobat EX, like you'd be like, sure, you know, but like I'm still gonna have to go through my opponent's probably like double Suicunes or whatever to win the game. But now with Mega Pokemon, like Crobat's actually a really, really good card because it has 170 HP, it can attack early, and it can live a hit, right? So like when you're playing a Pokemon like Crobat, oftentimes it just operates very similarly to like a Mega Absol, right? But it's worth 2 prizes and not 3. So that's the whole concept here, hopefully going through a Mega Crobat and then forcing your opponent to also go through a Mega Absol while having, you know, the Poison Barb chip damage with Nihilego. It really does add up. And I think that the Poison Barb Nihilego combo is actually one of the more underrated combos in the entire game right now. It really adds up. And a lot of decks are very reliant on that kind of Mega Pokemon sweeping through your deck, right? So if you're playing multiple Pokemon that aren't worth 3 prizes and you're forcing your opponent to be in the active for 2, 3, 4 turns, if they're taking multiple points of damage from the poison, it adds up after time. It really does. Like the Poison Barb Nihilego stuff is absolutely legit. I like the Leap Over Absol with Cyrus, just not a bad leadoff card whatsoever. Double copycat, double research for consistency. That's the other thing as well that I think really brought Crobat up into the spotlight. Similar to Hydreigon, which utilizes double copycat, double research. It feels more consistent than it should be, right? Anybody that plays Hydreigon thinks like, wow, they just like always have it. Crobat operates under the exact same precedent. It's the exact same type of card where it's a dark type stage 2 Pokemon that can attack immediately after it evolves, right? Just like Hydreigon. It just has a little bit more HP, does less damage, but it's, you know, it's effectively a very similar card. So I think a lot of people are playing Crobat EX in place of Hydreigon, and it is actually doing quite well in multiple scenarios. Also the attack poisons. So I know we mentioned like Poison Barb, but Crobat can actually do the poisoning. It doesn't have to get attacked, which is a relevant factor, right? So that 70 damage all of a sudden becomes 100 damage. And if they stay in after your turn, then they take, 120 or 130 damage. It really adds up. Like it significantly does add up. Crobat, with Nihilegos is able to 2-hit KO a lot of Pokemon in the game. So in some ways, actually, very similar to Hydreigon, this deck list is, but just kind of better in some ways. You know what I mean? So again, people think I hate on Hydreigon. I don't. It just doesn't do well into like, relevant matchups. But I think Crobat is massively slept on. I've been trying to say it for the last like a week or two, but here's an example of a Crobat deck that won a pretty decent sized tournament. So shout out to Cdax. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of Crobat. Next up is going to be Arthur124841. Shout out to him from Brazil. Storms meets Fraps Drinker. This man has been MIA for a couple of months because he is playing Silvally Rampardos, and he went 6-3, made all the way into top 16 and lost to Frog EX Najord playing Mega Altaria Giratina. But guess what, guys? It's Silvally Rampardos, right? A blast from the past. I think I'm going to probably end up titling this video New Decks, like crazy new decks or shocking new decks. But everybody knows that like every deck has already been created at least once. So these are sort of new to relevancy, I guess, is the concept. You know what I mean? You can comment down below. You can hate on me for whatever I title the video. It's all good. But anyway, it's Silvally and Rampardos, guys. Like, shout out. You know what I mean? Like, how long has it been? I still think that this is a deck that we have to consider from time to time. I know people forget about Silvally. They've forgotten about Rampardos for a variety of reasons. It's seeming like it does seem like these types of cards have maybe been replaced by other cards in the metagame. Hydreigon maybe replacing, Rampardos, things like that. But Silvally Rampardos, I mean, this is a strong deck still by every standard. And I honestly think that, maybe it's not like the best deck in the game, but like if you were to go into, this weekend's tournament and you were to, in 30% of the tournament were to play this deck, like it has a very good chance of winning. I really do think it's slept on. I think Pokemon Pocket, like, and probably other games as well, it just sort of comes out, like, when new cards come out, people are just, like, more willing to play the newer cards, regardless of whether they're that much better than the old stuff. So what happens sometimes is that, decks that really aren't that bad just don't see play because people have already played them for a while and they kind of get bored of them. And I think Silvally and Rampardos maybe falls into that category, but a very strong deck still. And I thought this was hilarious that someone this week was playing Silvally Rampardos in a tournament and went 6-3. You know what I mean? Like who goes into a tournament in January 21st of 2026 playing Silvally Rampardos? I don't know. It's pretty fun. That's just a funny thing to me. So I wanted to give them a shout out, not something that I've seen in quite some time. So, shout out to Arthur here. Nothing really stands out. In fact, we are playing Copycats. So, back when this deck saw play, Copycat didn't exist. You know what I mean? It wasn't a card. So theoretically, this deck probably has gotten a significant amount better because of Copycat. So it's just another thing. I think Silvally's a card that people might wake up to, especially if we get enough broken supporter cards. Silvally really is not a bad card whatsoever. And I've been saying it. I haven't really been practicing that myself, but I do just feel like Silvally's probably pretty good and probably deserves to see a little bit more play. Just my opinion. It's, you don't have to believe me. Anyway, shout out to Arthur. Shout out to Storms meets Fraps Drinker tournament here. Very, very cool. Next up from the same tournament, Storm meets Fraps Drinker. People were just going all throwbacks this tournament for some reason because this player here, CDK IFB Yami from the United States, went 5-2-1. And guess what, guys? guess what? He was playing Marowack EX. Yeah, he just was. He was like, you know what? We're doing it. Beat a Suicune, beat a Blaziken, beat a Tapu Koko, beat a Dark Greninja, beat a Crobat. So I mean, just beat a lot of meta decks. Ended up losing to Crobat here in top 32. But yeah, guys, this is Marowack EX. This is literally Marowack EX, a very, very funny card here. A card that I think realistically is not that bad. And, you know, when Will released a couple of sets ago, I kind of told people, and people didn't really even play it at the time, but I was like, Crobat's probably pretty decent with Will, because you're guaranteed 80, and it's a 50-50 shot for 2 energies to deal 160 damage. You know, Marowack EX is not that weak of a Pokemon. It's actually quite strong. You combine that with Lucario, all of a sudden we're one-hit-killing Mega Pokemon, which is just hilarious. Just absolutely hilarious. And that's what this deck is. It's just sort of a coin flip machine. In fact, we're only playing 1 copy of Will in this deck list. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this deck is like the greatest thing in the world and we should all be playing Marowack EX. But, you know, what I am going to tell you is that, you know, like, it has potential. I know everyone's playing like Mega Lopunny and whatever, but Mega Marowack is here. It's a 2-prize Pokemon, 2 energies, 160 damage. That's 180 with Lucario, maybe even 200 with double Lucario plus Rocky Helmet damage. All of a sudden, you know, like, we high roll and our opponent just can't win. They just lose to Marowack. And I find that to be, you know, absolutely hilarious. So, you know, shout out to Marowack. I have nothing really else to say about this deck, quite frankly. There is nothing else to say about it. It's just Marowack EX. It's basically like if you were to play Mega Lopunny, but just you maybe just don't have Mega Lopunny, and maybe he didn't. Maybe CDK IFB Yami just did not open Mega Lopunny. Maybe he does not have the cards, but felt a little left out. He wanted to flip some coins. He wanted to ride the wave, and he was like, you know what, my boy Marowack will take me there. He'll do it for me. And maybe he did, to be fair. You know, Marowack put in work here for a bit, as we saw here, right? I mean, lost to Hydreigon, you know, that might be a tough one. Suicune as well might be tough. But yeah, you know, there you go. Are you not entertained by Marowack EX, right? Again, January 21st, 2026, Silvally Rampardos, Marowack EX. I think at the end of the day too, like, we've been in this season for like 5 weeks, and you know, people are just sort of ready. You know, they're ready for something else. They've played enough of the new cards, and they're just trying something new, or trying something old, I guess, in this respect. You know what I mean? I do understand it. So I wanted to showcase this because why not? I'm obligated to show you if Marowack pops into a tournament and goes 5-3. I am. That's the whole point of this video. We had to do it. So, you know, let me know what you guys think. You know, do I play Marowack on my live stream tonight? Do we? Probably not, but maybe we will. Next up at Shinra's birthday bash is Frosty Ice Lad. Shout out to Frosty Ice Lad. Absolute legend here. 6-1. He was playing Mega Lopunny and Greninja. And if you take a look at this record, by the way, he lost in top 32, but undefeated in Swiss. Just a straight up 6-0 run in Swiss. Beat Greninja, beat Dark Greninja once, twice, 3 times. Beat Altaria, Greninja, beat Greninja, Mega Absol, and beat Magnus and Oricorio. You know, people, I think, have an issue with the sort of progression of the metagame and the fact that it really is just Greninja. It's just Greninja and how you can play it. And, you know, as it turns out, you know, you can just play Greninja with Mega Lopunny, and it's probably going to be pretty good. I think it was either Numa Tenale or Narumi. One of them a couple of weeks ago played this deck and actually did quite well at our tournament on the weekend. But yeah, I mean, this is a deck. You know, this is a deck list, and you got to be absolutely terrified of a deck list like this. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, Mega Lopunny, also a high roll card. You know, they can go turn 2 Rare Candy Greninja Cyrus you. They can just start flipping coins. Like, it's simple. It's basically, you know, Mega Lopunny is just, it's the Mega Pokemon of Marowack. You know, and that's what it is. Just a little bit better, a little bit stronger. Double Rocky Helmets as well, because I guess why not? Hitmontop's a good card. I do think Hitmontop is actually really quality. It's a really nice card you can sprinkle into really any fighting type deck, and I do like Hitmontop a lot. But yeah, I mean, the entire concept here is we just Greninja Cyrus. We only run 1 Cyrus in the deck, but you keep in mind, like, Greninja's dealing extra damage for Mega Lopunny, right? So, you know, that attack, which sometimes you flip tails and you only do 90 damage, you know, might not really be enough with all the healing, with all the Indeedees in the game. You know, Greninja solves some of that math. Oftentimes, you know, with this deck, you are just sort of water shurikening the active. You know, you're just shurikening the active. You're just being like, well, you know, maybe we need the extra 20, you know, and that's what we're going to do. We're just going to hit on the active and hope that we flip some coins. Maybe the confusion sticks with Mega Lopunny. It's a pretty difficult deck to deal with. And I said it multiple times. I think Mega Lopunny is actually a really strong card. I just wish that, like, it didn't have the potential to deal nothing. And I think that's the one thing holding back this card, is that sometimes you deal literally 0 damage with Mega Lopunny. And I just can't get around that, right? I mean, Pokemon Pocket isn't the most intricately competitive game out there. But like, you got to play something that just doesn't sometimes do nothing. Like that's kind of where I draw the line. And even though I do think Mega Lopunny has a ton of potential, I think most people play it for a bit and go, wow, like I literally did 0 damage this game. Like I probably shouldn't be playing this card. And that's the reality of Mega Lopunny. So I do think probably the best way to play it is with Greninja because Greninja's broken. But yeah, here's just one example, 6-1 Frosty Ice Lad. Shout out to him. A really, really fun deck list and an interesting performance. Again, just throw Greninja in it and it's probably going to make your deck a bit better. Next up from Frog EX Super Cup 100 is Decidueye. This is FedEx here, who got first place at the tournament, by the way, playing Decidueye. His only 2 losses were to Hydreigon a couple of times. And as we know, Hydreigon can be a little bit scary, right, for Decidueyes. But yeah, first place Decidueye deck, just like the Dark Greninja deck and the Crobat deck. This was a large tournament this week. Frog EX, one of the major players in the competitive tournament scene. And, FedEx here got first place playing Decidueye. So, it's just sort of, again, proof of concept, guys. Like, Decidueye is a quality deck. It's a real meta deck. It's winning large tournaments. I don't want people to sit back and say, well, like, does this matter? Like, I think it's important to note that, like, yes, we do have the largest weekly tournament series, but that doesn't mean that it's the only thing that matters. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, there's other tournaments throughout the week, and Dark Greninja's winning tournaments, Crobat's winning tournaments, Decidueye's winning tournaments. It happens, right? It's not just all Suicune and Greninja decks. So again, it's just sort of to show you guys that this is kind of what happens sometimes. And Decidueye is a quality deck list. It really is a significantly strong deck in the game. When Decidueye came out, I kind of understood that it was a strong card, and it took some time, I feel like, for Decidueye to really get over the hump. But I think at this point, it is sort of solidified itself as like a top 5, well, maybe not top 5, definitely a top 10 deck in the metagame. I don't know if we're going to see anything replace Decidueye moving forward. Honestly, maybe. Well, it's interesting. We'll have to wait and see, but it does well into Suicune, which is pretty cool. So shout out anyway to FedEx for winning the Frog EX Super Cup. Shout out to Frog EX for running that tournament. Next up are going to be a couple of players from our PMPT number 17 tournament this past weekend. The first one is going to be Extreme Nivek from France, and he was playing Mega Blaziken with Indeedee. He went 6-2-1, did make day 2, lost in top 64 here. But yeah, Mega Blaziken, and it's got Indeedee in it, which is kind of funny. So I know some people have really been sort of pushing this. They've been like, yo, Blaziken with Indeedee's kind of broken. And I do kind of see it to some degree, right? 210 HP, but when you heal for 20 every turn, that's like 40 extra HP effectively, which means that you have to deal 250 damage to Blaziken, which means you have to hit for 130 2 turns in a row, I think is how the math works out. But we also play Lily. So for some breakpoints, I do think Indeedee is going to be extremely relevant. And I find that to be really cool. And I think one of the biggest benefits of these stage 2 mega Pokemon is the fact that they can have a lot of HP and that you can heal with Lily. Like that is sort of one of the big factors here is like, well, if I come into the active spot early, can I live a couple of hits? Because if I can, then I just win because my opponent might not be able to. That's one of the biggest advantages here. I think Venusaur does that quite well, but Mega Blaziken has that potential. So shout out to Indeedee. Again, maybe it matters to some degrees. I don't know what matchups and what breakpoints specifically the Indeedee is going to be good for. If we go back to the matchups here, we see that it beat a couple of Decidueyes. It beat a few Altaria decks, lost to Altaria. It actually lost to a Decidueye as well, beat Hydreigon. So I don't know. It's hard to really say here. If Extreme Nivek is watching this video, I would love to have him let me know in the comments. Or if you have played this deck, if you've tried Indeedee and Blaziken, let me know. Other than that, it's just Blaziken. Like there's nothing, I'm not like going to sit here and say this is like the craziest concept of all time. It's Blaziken with Indeedee, and that's pretty funny. But I do think it has a lot of potential. I think Indeedee is a broken card. I think the 2 most played Pokemon in the entire metagame the last 2 or 3 months has been Chingling and Indeedee. Like, I don't know if people really realize that, but like those have been the most played cards since they've been released, right? Because they're universally applicable and they're very useful. Indeedee, definitely kind of a broken card. Anyway, shout out to Extreme Nivek. Extreme? XTREM. I think that's Extreme. I don't know. Shout out to him. And yeah, congrats for making day 2. Lastly is going to be Winter Sun from, again, also the PMPT number 17 Crimson Qualifier this past weekend. This is Leafeon EX with Celebi EX, and that's really why I wanted to include it. Beat a variety of different decks, to be honest. Like, beat Suicune Gyarados, beat Jolteon, beat Altaria Greninja, beat Hydreigon 3 times. Again, the grass weakness probably helping there, and then lost to Suicune twice, I guess. Also lost to Charizard. Those are matchups I probably would not love to hit if I was playing Leafeon Celebi. It would be Charizard and Suicune. And as it turns out, those are probably the things that, you probably also don't want to play. But anyway, let's take a look at his deck list here because, we talked about Leafeon recently. We talked about it with Jolteon and how Leafeon really is, you know, with boosted evolution Eevee, with Leaf Capes, with access to Erika's, like it's not a bad card. Like Leafeon EX, as far as you know, all Pokemon Go in Pokemon Pocket is actually pretty strong. And you know, there are dark type decks weak to grass that are relevant in the metagame. So this is literally just Leafeon EX, one Kartana thrown in here because, you know, we just want to get rid of those baby Pokemon or something, right? I don't know. But Celebi EX. You know, we got Celebi EX, which, you know, is also a coin flip card. But I did mention it, you know, at the beginning when Mega Rising initially released. I was like, you know, like Celebi can do like kind of infinite damage, right? So Pokemon like that might become more and more relevant because you can just sort of attack once, take a KO, and then win the game. And, you know, that's pretty cool. So shout out to Celebi. I know it's probably going to be a really difficult one in a lot of different matchups here, but, you know, 130 HP, it does seem like not a lot, but when you Leaf Cape it, you go to 160. And like 160 on Celebi is like kind of a broken Pokemon. I also think Celebi's underrated as a leadoff option going second. Like there are times where if you can get lucky on those early coin flips, like on turn 2, we're attacking with powerful blooms. So like you have the potential on turn 2 to deal 100 damage, and then turn 3 you can deal 150. And if you do kind of get lucky on those early coin flips, like the game kind of snowballs, and all of a sudden like Celebi might be enough to kind of win you the game outright if you don't even get Leafeon. But even if we do get Leafeon, we're able to generate that additional energy a turn earlier with boosted evolution Eevee, right? Because we can evolve on that first turn, which is pretty cool. So again, you know, this is something not to sleep on. Like I do think Celebi is a very powerful Pokemon. It's a dangerous Pokemon, and Leafeon, you know, has been buffed recently. So a very interesting deck. You know what I mean? It's a cool one. It's shout out to Celebi because, you know, we're this late in the season. I think people think the metagame's very figured out, but then all of a sudden we got, you know, Leafeon and Celebi EX in day 2 of the largest tournament of the week, right? And I find that to be very, very interesting. You know what I mean? So shout out to Winter Sun from Brazil. Very, very cool deck list. What do you guys think here of Leafeon and Celebi? Comment down below. That's the video. Shout out to all of these players. Shout out to you guys for watching. Shout out to, you know, all of the people that were running these tournaments throughout the week. We're getting towards the end of the season. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we're in the waiting room. You know, I think most people are ready. We're ready for new cards. We're ready for a new season. We're ready for a new metagame, and I'm excited about it. We should get the official trailer announcement either tomorrow or Friday. Who knows? No one knows, but it is coming up soon. We did some speculation in yesterday's video. Go check it out if you haven't seen it already. Maybe we go live with ranked battles tonight. Maybe we do. If it just really depends on whether or not I'm feeling it. But I do enjoy going live, so hopefully we do that. And then again, the Invitational is this weekend, which will, you know, be really fun. So shout out to that. Comment down below, like and subscribe. We'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, that's it. That's the video. Peace out, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. Bye.